Welcome back to the channel, where stories walk barefoot and still arrive deep in the heart. She married young, with hope tied like a wrapper around her waist. The men she chose had empty pockets and honest hands. He laughed easily, cooked when food was small, and spoke of tomorrow as if it listened. Neighbors shook their heads, saying love does not buy Gary. She smiled and stayed. Years passed. Bills grew louder. Friends returned from the city with shining phones and softer voices. One evening, a rich man stopped his car near her shop. He spoke gently, smelled of success, and promised rest. He said struggle was not a crown to wear forever. His words sat in her chest like warm bread. At home, her husband came back tired, dust on his shoes, hope still trying. She watched him eat in silence and felt anger she could not explain. The poor house felt smaller that night. She packed without noise, leaving a short note and long pain. Dawn met her already in another life. The rich house was wide and cold. Curtains were heavy, smiles light. She learned to dress slower, talk less, and wait often. The man loved her beauty, not her voice. Still, money solved many things. Hunger disappeared. Shame hid itself. She told herself she had chosen wisely. But life keeps its own calendar. The rich man's business bent and then broke. Calls stopped. Friends vanished. The big house echoed. The gentle voice turned sharp. Blame became her new name. She remembered laughter from a smaller room and felt a quiet ache. One afternoon, rain trapped her indoors. She looked at her hands and saw they were still the same. No ring could change that. Outside, the world moved on without her plans. She understood then that wealth can visit, but character stays. The thought sat heavy, yet clear. Far away, her former husband swept a small shop he now owned. Life had tested him, not crushed him. He still spoke to tomorrow. Paths crossed again only in memory, where choices never sleep. Time watched quietly. Regret knocked, not to punish, but to teach. She learned that leaving hunger is easy, leaving lessons is not. Somewhere between loss and memory, her heart grew wiser, slower, and ready to listen, even when answers arrive late. Life keeps counting, and tomorrow always asks who you became inside quietly. Morning entered the big house without greeting. She woke before the curtains moved, staring at a ceiling that no longer impressed her. Silence had weight now. Even the air felt rented. She dressed slowly, not for beauty, but for balance. The mirror showed a woman who had chased ease and found questions instead. The rich man left early, face tight, words short. Once, his absence meant freedom. Now it meant worry. The gate closed with a sound that echoed longer than needed. She sat, waiting for nothing in particular. Hunger was gone, yet peace refused to stay. Outside, life moved with noise. Hawkers shouted. Children laughed. Somewhere, people struggled and still smiled. That sound followed her through the house like a soft reminder. She remembered mornings when water was fetched together, when laughter filled space before problems arrived. Those memories no longer hurt. They whispered. Days turned slow. Money thinned. Respect vanished quietly. Friends who praised her choice stopped calling. The house felt less like shelter, more like proof. She learned that luxury without warmth is just a room with echoes. One evening, she stepped out alone. The street did not recognize her as special. She liked that. She bought roasted corn and ate it standing, oil on her fingers, shame already gone. In that moment, she felt close to herself again. Across town, a small shop closed late. Her former husband counted coins with tired pride. His hands were rougher, his back bent, but his eyes were steady. Life had delayed him, not denied him. He greeted neighbors, joked lightly, and locked up with care. Home was modest, yet alive. She heard of him through voices that did not know her. They said he helped others now. They said patience paid him back slowly. The word stayed with her through the night. Regret did not shout. It sat calmly, asking honest questions. She understood something then. Leaving was easy because hope was loud. Staying would have been harder, because faith grows quietly. She had chosen sound over substance, shine over soil. The lesson did not crush her. It shaped her. Life does not always bring people back together. Sometimes it brings wisdom instead. As she lay awake, listening to her own breath, she accepted the truth. Roads taken do not return, but they still teach. Tomorrow waited, not with promises, but with space. And for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to walk slower, eyes open, heart softer, carrying her past without letting it lead her. Night brought honesty. Not the loud kind, but the type that sits beside you and waits. She could no longer pretend comfort was the same as peace. The house slept, yet her thoughts stayed awake. She traced her journey slowly, step by step, seeing where desire spoke louder than sense. Morning found her at the gate, watching people pass. Nobody noticed her pause. She liked that too. She walked farther than usual, letting her feet choose. They carried her to familiar dust and narrow roads. The air smelled like work and hope mixed together. She breathed deeply, like someone returning from far away. She passed her old street by accident, or maybe not. The houses looked smaller, but warmer. Voices floated from open doors. Someone laughed the way people do when joy is real and unpaid. Her chest tightened, not from pain, but from knowing. She did not stop. She was not ready. Back in the big house, the rich man spoke of loss and anger. His words fell like coins on stone. She listened without fear. Something in her had settled. She understood now that strength does not come from escape, but from staying present. Even when it is hard. She began to help herself. She cooked again, simple meals, tasted effort. She cleaned not to impress, but to breathe. She took walks, spoke less, observed more. Slowly, she felt less like a guest in her own life. Days later, she met a woman selling vegetables who looked at her kindly. They talked about nothing important. That small talk mattered. It reminded her that life is carried by ordinary moments, not grand promises. Across town, her former husband fixed a leaking roof for a neighbor. He worked quietly, accepted thanks with a nod. He had learned to let life teach him without bitterness. He no longer waited for people to return. He waited for growth. Their worlds did not collide. They did not need to. What she took from him stayed with her. What he learned from her stayed with him. Sometimes, love does not last as presence, but as influence. One afternoon, she packed a small bag. Not to run, but to begin again. She left the house calmly, without drama. The gate closed behind her, softer this time. She did not look back. Life did not clap. It rarely does. But it opened space. She walked forward with lighter steps, carrying lessons instead of blame. Somewhere between mistake and meaning, she found herself again. Not richer, not poorer. Just wiser, and finally awake. She rented a small room near a busy road. The walls were thin, but the place felt honest. Noise entered freely, carrying life with it. She slept better there than she ever did under high ceilings. Each morning came with purpose, even if the purpose was still learning her name again. She found work at a food stall. The owner spoke fast and laughed faster. There was no pity in her eyes, only expectation. She liked that. Her hands learned heat, timing, patience. Sweat returned, not as shame, but as proof. At the end of each day, tiredness felt earned. Sometimes customers complained. Sometimes food burned. She learned to smile through it without shrinking. Strength grew quietly, the way roots do. She stopped comparing herself to who she used to be. That woman had taught her enough. On some evenings, she sat outside and watched buses rush past. People came and went, chasing their own answers. She realized everyone was choosing something, even when they pretended not to. Life was not punishing her. It was shaping her. News reached her again. The rich man had moved on quickly, filling space with noise. It did not sting. That chapter had already closed itself. She wished him calm, not because he deserved it, but because she did. One market day, she saw her former husband from afar. He stood with confidence she remembered and calm she had never seen before. He laughed with customers, not to impress, but to connect. She did not approach. She smiled to herself. Growth had met him kindly. She understood then that love does not always mean return. Sometimes it means release without anger. The thought settled in her chest like peace finding its seat. Weeks passed. Her back grew stronger. Her voice steadier. She sent small money to someone who needed it more than her. That act surprised her. Kindness returned her to herself. Life still tested her. Rain came unplanned. Bills waited. But fear no longer led. She had learned that comfort without truth is fragile, and struggle with meaning can still sing. One night, power went out. She lit a candle and laughed softly. The flame danced, stubborn and bright. She watched it and felt something warm rise. Not pride. Not regret. Gratitude. She had walked away once chasing ease. Now she walked forward choosing depth. Tomorrow did not promise riches. It promised growth. And for the first time, that was more than enough. Time softened her edges. Not by making life easier, but by making her steadier. She no longer rushed mornings. She greeted the day like someone who understood delays. Work remained honest, sometimes tiring, often loud. Yet it fed her spirit as much as her body. She saved little by little. Coins became plans. Plans became courage. On quiet afternoons, she wrote ideas on scrap paper, dreams small enough to hold, strong enough to grow. She learned that vision does not need noise. It needs patience. People around her noticed the change. They trusted her hands, her words, her calm. She listened more than she spoke. When advice came, it came gently. She had learned that pain teaches best when it is not forced. One day, the food stall owner asked her to manage sales. Responsibility landed lightly, like someone placing faith on her shoulder. She accepted without fear. Confidence did not shout. It simply stood. Across town, the man she once left continued his steady climb. His shop expanded. His name carried respect. He still lived simply, still helped quietly. He had learned that growth without pride lasts longer. Life had shaped him too. They crossed paths again, not by chance, but by timing. A market crowd slowed them both. Eyes met. Surprise passed quickly. There was no anger waiting. Only recognition. They greeted each other with warmth that did not demand explanation. They spoke briefly. About work. About health. About small things that matter. Silence filled the gaps comfortably. There was no pull backward, no hunger to reclaim. What they shared now was understanding, not desire. She walked away lighter. Closure had arrived without drama. She realized then that healing does not always come with reunion. Sometimes it comes with peace. Days later, she opened a small corner shop with her savings and borrowed faith. It was modest, but hers. Each item placed felt like a promise kept. Customers came. Some stayed. Life continued. At night, she sat outside her shop, watching the road glow with movement. She thought of the girl who once chased shine. She smiled at her. That girl had been brave too, just untrained. Life had other plans, yes. Hard ones. But those plans had carved depth into her spirit. She no longer feared choices. She respected them. Tomorrow waited again. Not as a test, but as a path. She was ready to walk it, steady and sure, knowing now that wealth can leave, love can change, but wisdom, once earned, stays. The shop grew slowly, like trust. Some days were quiet. Others came with long lines and tired smiles. She welcomed all with the same calm. Her voice carried warmth now, not effort. People felt it and returned. She learned names. She learned habits. She learned how to listen without fixing. Stories passed through her counter daily. Some were heavy. Some light. She treated them all gently. Life had taught her that everyone is carrying something unseen. Morning routines became sacred. Sweeping the front. Arranging goods. Greeting the sun without hurry. These small acts shaped her more than big dreams ever did. She had learned that stability is built quietly. Occasionally, memories visited. Not to disturb, but to remind. She no longer pushed them away. They were part of her growth. She understood now that mistakes are not stains. They are teachers that leave once the lesson is learned. One afternoon, a young woman stood by her stall, restless and unsure. She spoke about love, comfort, choices. The words sounded familiar. She listened carefully, then spoke gently. She did not warn. She shared experience without judgment. Wisdom lands better when it is not forced. The girl left thoughtful. She watched her go and smiled softly. Life had turned her pain into guidance. That felt like healing. News reached her again about the rich man. His life moved fast, filled with noise and distraction. She felt no pull. That road had ended where it should. Closure does not always come with apologies. Sometimes it comes with silence that no longer hurts. Across town, the men she once left walked his path with purpose. Their lives stayed separate, yet respectful. They had become better people, even if they were no longer together. That truth settled peacefully. As months passed, her shop became known. Not for size, but for warmth. Children stopped by after school. Elders rested nearby. Laughter lived there. She realized she had built more than a business. She had built belonging. One evening, as she locked up, the sky turned deep orange. She paused to watch it. Gratitude filled her chest. Not loud, not dramatic. Just steady. Life had taken her through hunger of the heart, hunger of the body, hunger of meaning. It had fed her slowly, carefully. She was no longer chasing ease. She was living truth. She walked home under fading light, steps unhurried. Tomorrow would bring its own work. She welcomed it. Years had passed quietly. She no longer chased dreams that were only shine. She woke each morning with steady breath, her hands carrying work, her heart carrying understanding. The girl who once left hunger for wealth was gone. In her place was someone who had learned the weight of choices and the value of patience. The small shop hummed with life. Children ran past, neighbors greeted her warmly, and she returned each smile with ease. She had built more than a business, she had built roots. Each coin earned, each meal served, each quiet conversation reminded her that life's richness is measured in meaning, not money. Sometimes she thought of her former husband. Not with longing, but with respect. He had stayed true to himself despite loss, and that steadiness had shaped her more than any luxury ever could. The paths they had walked apart taught her about endurance, humility, and the quiet power of integrity. She no longer feared hard days. Rain, heat, or empty pockets did not sway her. Her spirit had learned to bend without breaking. Gratitude filled the spaces where regret once lived. She had learned that every choice carries weight, every lesson leaves a mark, and every heart is stronger when it has carried sorrow without letting it settle too long. One evening, she closed her shop and stepped outside. The sky stretched wide above her, painted with deep purples and soft golds. She inhaled the evening air, tasting freedom and peace together. She smiled softly to herself, knowing life had given her a second chance, not at wealth, but at living fully, truthfully, and deeply. The world kept moving, people still laughed, streets still bustled. She joined them not with haste, not with envy, but with a calm that came from understanding her own journey. Wealth had visited and left. Love had tested and gone. But wisdom, patience, and quiet joy stayed with her, unwavering. She walked home slowly, steps light, carrying nothing but herself and the lessons life had taught. And in that walking, in that steady movement forward, she felt rich beyond measure. Life had other plans, yes, but they had shaped her, strengthened her, and finally allowed her to stand fully awake in her own story.